What's good, everybody? My name is Jack Dawkins. Welcome to season 4 of Stage Dive. For those of you who've been listening, you know that the podcast traditionally has been about tips and tricks that make great performances on stage, how to prepare, how to rehearse, how to navigate an audience. But this season, I feel like we've leaned more into a new category, which is the origin story of all of these artists. How did each of these performers become the person, the performer, the artist that they are today? How did they go from zero to getting on stage? And how do they navigate all of the bumps and twists and turns that make the creative journey both beautiful and really challenging? I was blown away by all of our guests this season, and I really, really hope you enjoyed this. My guest on the podcast today is Victor Adeniran. So he was originally born in Nigeria, where he lived through most of his childhood before coming to the United States and actually almost immediately enlisting in the US military and becoming a Marine. And then during his time in the Marines, started and cultivated a passion for dance. So to say that this man has had a diversity of experience would be a wild understatement. He's now living in San Diego, and he's working on a concept that I really love, which is that he wants to take a number of poems that he's written and score them to different pieces of music and then create dance routines that support the words and the music around it. It sounds like it would be immersive and creative and beautiful. But what I really loved most about this conversation is that Victor just has a natural joy within him, and you can tell it radiates out, and he just seems so unbothered by life and things that might bring him down. So if you need a pick-me-up, if you need to hear about someone pursuing something that is not easy or clear, but that he feels a deep passion for, this is the episode for you. Please enjoy my conversation with Victor. Victor, what has been the best part of your week so far? What has lit you up? What has made you smile?
Oh, let's see. Just being so much healthier. So I injured myself a little bit in June, and
Okay.
I wasn't able to run or lift or dance or aerial or anything really that much. But this
Mm.
week I felt great. I've been back into running, and it felt great. I didn't hurt afterwards. It feels like I'm healing really well. So yeah, that's made me smile for sure.
That's yes, please. Yes, please. Um, like have like being taken out of your body when it's such a huge part of like how you connect to self. I know how frustrating that can be.
It
Um,
really is, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm curious. Like, this is a random first question, but like, so I like my background is more of an athlete than an artist. Being an artist is relatively new to me, but like, so
Hmm.
I'm very, very familiar with how I think about training and competition when it comes to running. Like,
Right.
for you, how do you compare that to what it's like to be in training or competition for dance?
Oh wow. I think they're very identical, quite frankly, because
Mm,
I started off as a sprinter, so
cool.
yeah, throughout like high school years, and then I was in the military, and I did that for a while as well, and then USA track and field for close to 2 whole seasons, and I did the hundreds and twos, and
Okay.
so it's a very individualized kind of sport as a sprinter. Even when you're in relays, you still have to focus on your leg and you getting off the block and you switching out the baton and all of that. And I feel like sometimes dance and aerial or whatnot, it's kind of the same. You kind of have to hone in your craft and focus on your skills. And even though you're part of an ensemble, thinking about how you affect the ensemble is still a thing. And
Yes.
so I feel like there's been a little bit of crossover with both. And yeah, I'm grateful to be able to like harness those skills of like being able to individuate even if I'm part of a group, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Mm.
Um, as a sprinter, what does it feel like when you only get like 10 or 11 seconds to perform? Like, some people bitch about having an open mic that's like only 5 minutes. It's like a 100-meter sprint, you get maybe 12 seconds on a
If
bad day.
if
Like,
that, yeah. Everything counts, and I think
yeah.
that's kind of like a very cognitive mental thing and
Mm,
psychological. It puts you in a space where you have to focus on like in the moment of nowness and nothing else matters but this very moment. And I think that's kind of cool. It's like the gun goes off, you have to get off that block in a millisecond. um, build up your speed, get into a full like stride and everything. All of that in like less than 10 seconds and 11 seconds and all of that. So I feel like it kind of makes you focus on now. And I like that aspect of it because I feel sometimes you get lost in like trying to think of too much about everything else but this very moment. And so for me,
Mm,
I like being in the moment and nowness. And so I live in that. Yeah.
yeah, 1,000%. That's where joy is, right? That's where
Exactly.
all the joy is. Can you talk about what the transition was like from going from like athletics, which not always a masculine space, but certainly a space where masculinity can show up and be welcomed, and the military, which again I would describe as a more masculine space, and then dance, which has more of kind of like a graceful, feminine kind of container. Like, what was that evolution like moving from one to the other?
Um, I think at times it was a little challenging because I really, really loved dancing as a young boy and all of that. And then
Mm.
I moved from Nigeria to the States when I was 17, and I joined the military literally that same year. And so, yeah,
Holy culture shock.
I know on all fronts, right? And so, like,
Yeah.
it was kind of a little different because I really had to like park everything else and focus on being a Marine, like that's what you do. And so I really didn't dance for quite a while. And then when I got a little settled in, I tried to kind of incorporate it into my lifestyle. And it worked for a bit until it was kind of like, oh, yeah, you got to go here, you got to deploy here, you got to deploy there. And then
Mm.
I felt like things always came to a complete halt. So, quite frankly, I don't think that the energy that came with both bothered me more than having the time to commit to one versus the other.
Sure.
Yeah. I felt like I've always embodied both energy, masculine and feminine, and I've never really changed that at all or even altered it. Um, and so it was easy for me to transition from one to the other in that sense. I think the harder thing for me was actually setting time to commit to one.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Um, I'm curious, like, when you look back at your time in the military, were there times when your ability to connect to that feminine energy helped or supported you?
absolutely. I was in the Marines for 14 years and I loved every single part of it.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so, because there was tons of like personal growth in that. I was such a
Sure.
young child. I was 17, literally. So I ain't no shit. So like, I didn't know what the hell I was doing,
Right.
And so it was kind of nice to have people to like guide me as far as like
Mm,
this is how you are or supposed to be as a Marine, and this is how you're supposed to be as a man, and this, that, and the third.
mm,
And there were things about that that I kind of did like. Um, but there were also times when I thought, oh, wow, it's really nice that I am so in tune with my emotions and my feelings because I felt like some of my Marines that I served with lacked a little bit of emotional intelligence because, like,
mm.
you're just so groomed to being a Marine and you identify as that. And you identify as part of the platoon and part of the company and part of everything else that a sense of self sometimes is missing and
Yeah.
or it's a total false notion of self. And so I
Mm,
felt like um, just me being in tune with my emotion really helped me through a lot, especially when I got back from multiple deployments. It was like having the emotional intelligence to be like, who is Victor? And I have to get back to the
mm.
sense of self and me um, to be able to stay healthy psychologically, if that makes any sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like again, I certainly can't relate to what it's like to come back from deployment, but I can imagine like you're in this very structured, very intense world. You're far from home, you're far from friends and family members, and like you said, like I am a Marine.
Right.
I'm in the connection of Marine, the spirit of Marine, etc. And then you come back to civilian life and like you are no longer in Marine mode. And you're like, ooh, fuck.
Exactly.
Like
It's really
this is new.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it's weird. Um, I'm curious, like as you look back, where do you feel like you started to cultivate that emotional intelligence? Where do you feel like it came from?
Oh, wow. I honestly feel like it came from like my upbringing.
Mm,
So my parents, obviously, they're Nigerians and they're Africans, and it's a very different culture being in Africa. Like, um, it's very structured in a sense. Like you just do what your parents tell you. You don't question. You don't ask conversations. They're like, "What the fuck do you have to say? Just get it done." Um, and so, however, like my parents were very, especially my mom, and I think it's because she's a psychologist. She's always like, "Tell me what you feel," and all of that stuff. And so I was always able to vocalize and talk to her. And my sister, who I idolize as well, has always been that. Um, and my brothers are not the most vocal person. They will always listen though. And so I feel like I've always
mm,
had tons of people around me that was always allowed to just be and get in tune with myself and be able to express and articulate whatever it is I'm going through. And so I feel like I've always kind of groomed that sense of self in my way of communicating. Even in my internal dialogue, I'm always like in tune with myself. So I think I've always
mm.
kind of had that. It probably magnified maybe when I got into my teen years, like 15, 16, 17. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Um, what do you miss about Nigeria?
Um, I think it would be kind of silly to say like the atmosphere, because I don't mean that as in weather, but I mean that as in like
But a little bit the weather, right? Like
maybe a
maybe a little
little.
bit the weather.
Yeah, but I mean like even the social and psychological atmosphere of it. Like it felt like
Mm,
home. Um,
mm,
it didn't matter where you were in that whole damn country. Like you always felt like you belonged in a sense. There was never, yeah, this is like sense of belonging and community,
mm.
and I kind of do miss that. I feel like
I'm sh-
most Americans are just so me, and individuals,
mm,
and sometimes that's great because I feel like um, it allows you to be you, whatever that happens to be. But I also feel like there's a sense of community and togetherness that is kind of void here that I miss a lot. You know?
yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Do you? I completely agree with you, and you're not the first person I've heard articulate that. I think it's one of the trade-offs of having a very individualistic culture, right?
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
we have a country where you see so much beautiful self-expression and so much creativity because people really trust their own instincts around how they create, how they show
Exactly.
up, and what that can look like, which is beautiful. But when you are constantly in a state of belief that like no one is like me, no one can relate to my experience, like you put up fucking
You
walls, right? It's like it's
do.
very hard to build relationship if your narrative is constantly that like no one understands.
Exactly.
And
And that's my thing is I feel like how can we, and I say we collectively as humans, how can we connect
yes,
to everyone else if if constantly this internal dialogue that no one will ever get it? Like we cannot be that distinct, like there must be someone. And I feel like there's some level of unlearning that needs to happen there, but I don't know. I'm just me.
I know
Yeah.
a massive amount. Well, and I think what's funny, maybe not funny, but like you were in the Marines, you've been an athlete, which means you've been on athletic teams. And so like those are pockets, right, where we find community. It's like, well, because we're both runners,
Right.
because we both know what the training feels like, we know what racing feels like. And the irony is like we completely skip over like the fact that we're both human. Like we
Exactly.
don't connect in that way. We only connect on like the shared activity, the shared doing. But at least it gives us a flavor of like, oh yeah, it is really nice to feel like there's shared experience or that you and I
Absolutely.
can understand each other in a way that others may not be able to.
Exactly.
But my hope, all right, I think one of the reasons art is so important is because like I think art is a connector because you and I can have nothing in common but observe or hear, a piece of art and connect because we both appreciate it. I feel like it's like it's a little sneaky Trojan horse that like let's just start to connect to
I think
people.
so too. I
Um,
definitely think so.
yeah, like how do you what does it mean to be in the community of dance to you? Like how do you feel about your relationship to that
Um,
group of human beings?
I love it because I feel like it's ever evolving, um,
Mm,
and it's also I feel like you can pick whatever pocket you want to fit in, which I think is kind of cool. Um,
yes.
because like every performer and every dancer and every aerialist knows what it is that they bring to the table, and they know what their strengths and their weaknesses are. And sometimes it can be kind of disheartening when you're told what the strengths or weaknesses are versus you picking them and
Mm,
and living in them. And I feel like dance
yes.
this day and age is so vast that you can kind of pick and choose where you want to go with it and what that is. And I kind of like that.
Yeah.
It allows you to grow at your own pace, and it allows you to explore whenever you feel like it and share whenever you feel like it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I like I'm projecting, but my guess is like one of the benefits of starting your journey with dance or like your professional journey with dance later in life is you arrived with a much deeper sense of self and a clearer knowing or even just a confidence in like it's okay that I can't do everything. It's
absolutely.
okay that I can't do this set of skills or whatever. Like I love what I do and I'm great at it and that's enough, right? Like
Yes, 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 yes. And I will say, like, I don't there's I think everyone comes with a sense of or a little bit of like this like imposter syndrome or feeling of inadequacy.
of
Like you
course.
can't help that, we're human. But you are 100% right. There was a time when I'm like, like this is what I can do. And there's hope for growth, and I will learn. And I'm always
Mm,
open to people teaching me. However, I'm not going to like beat myself down because I can do X, Y, Z.
yes.
And I feel like when you observe people that are trying so hard to accomplish things that are expected of them versus things that they actually genuinely want to do for sense of fulfillment, um, I feel like it
Mm,
could be a letdown. Um, because it's like, why don't you want to excel at this skill because you want to, because you think that it will make you a better artist versus you thinking that everyone wants you to be that. And so,
mm,
yeah, I definitely am happy that I started a little later because, um, yeah, in a sense, I was mature enough to know that I don't have to please everyone. Like, yeah, absolutely not.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I feel like that one of the biggest things you learn as an artist is like you
You
actually
can't.
can't.
It's
There is
impossible.
no, you cannot. It is utterly impossible to please everyone all the time
And quite,
with all in all the
yeah. And
ways.
quite frankly, I feel like that comes from a space of ego. Like, do you think you're that
Mm,
amazing as a person and or as an artist that everyone has to love you? Like, are you for real? I think that's
right.
madness. And art in itself is so subjective. And so we all look at it from a different lens. And so for you to think that
Yeah.
everyone would love you and your art is just, it's inane. And it's like, why would you even try to do that? Like, stop laughing at me.
Like I'm laughing with you, sir. I'm laughing with you because at once I can see I've observed this in other people, and like if anything, your heart breaks because you're
Exactly.
just like you're working so hard, and this matters so much to you, and it's just not that important. Like I know you don't feel that in this moment, but like there's so much more life to be lived
Yeah.
outside of this fear. And I'm laughing because like I've fucking done this. Are you kidding? Of course I have. Like why don't more people like my song? Why don't more people come to my shows? Like I don't know because they're fucking busy. I don't
Exactly.
know. Like
It is what it
it's not a
is.
big
Yeah.
deal. Right. Right. Um, you know what you're saying brings up another thing that I get really curious about. Like And I'm sure, I know this is true in kind of all art forms, but I think particularly in hip hop, which is where I tend to dwell, like there is very much this attitude of like, if you're not trying to be the best, why the fuck are you here?
I mean,
And it's like, I could give you 750 reasons why I'm here that have nothing to do with being the best, right? Like, because I love it, because it's
exactly.
fun, because there's community,
Yeah,
because I love being on stage. Like, there's so many reasons, but there's like this idea that if you don't pursue mastery and like some objective level of mastery where you are unequivocally better than other people, then there's no
right.
point. And it's like, wow, what a joyless way to exist. Like,
Seriously.
that sounds
It really
miserable.
does. And so like when I moved here and I got stationed at Camp Pendleton, which is like in San Diego County. And I was like in my
Hmm.
20s or so. And I was like trying to find the best dance studio to go to. And I found this place called Culture Shock San Diego. Amazing, amazing place. And so I show up and they had auditions and they were like, and my goal was to be on their troupe. And I show up for the audition and they're like, well, you're good, but not as good as we'd like. So we'd give you a scholarship. You can take classes and then maybe you can be on trip. I'm like, down. I'm like, whatever. And so long as I get to learn.
Cool.
Exactly. But you're right. I wasn't like desperate. And it's not because I wasn't ambitious or driven, but because I also knew that like,
Hmm.
for me, I feel like art and artists should enjoy the products of our work because it is fulfilling. Um, I feel
Mm.
like when you are chasing the outcomes that are like more lucrative and cloudish and come with all these external like extrinsic things, it could become a burden. And I don't want my art to be a burden. I don't want my art to be something that I have to do versus something that I want to do. Um, And I always thought that they would look at me like I was crazy. And I'm like, I'm coming to class. I'm doing everything I got to do. I'm enjoying it. I'm sorry that you're sad because you're not on stage with Beyonce yet, but like, I can't help you there. Like, but I absolutely loved it. I grew so much in performance and everything. And I'm so grateful for that. And I just
Mm.
hoped and wished that everybody had the same experience. And it wasn't the case. You could always tell.
I mean, like, it's my belief that like God, the universe, spirit, however you want to define it, has the best sense of humor because like, how else do we get through
Absolutely.
life? Like,
You
you
do.
need it, and so like the the joke of it all to me is like when you show up detached from the outcome and enjoying the process, it is so much easier for people to enjoy watching you.
Yes.
And like it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle when your whole experience is stress and grasping and grief and why haven't I? Like no one wants to see that shit. Are you kidding? Like we have like we all have enough bullshit we deal
Exactly.
with every day. I don't want to take
Oh
on
my
yours
God,
too.
exactly.
I can't
It's like the last thing I want to do is
can't
take
do
up
it.
your burden. No, thank you. Like,
Right. Right. No thanks. And like there's like I don't want to say a cruelty to it. And again, like part of the reason this podcast exists is because I do think artists deserve a space to acknowledge that art is hard.
yes,
Like it's like it I we can both sit here and say like find joy in your art, detached from outcome, etc. And day to day, moment to moment, when you can't get a fucking skill you want, or you don't make the troupe, or it's not going the way you see it's going for other people, we're human. Of course. We have that
of
pining,
course.
that curiosity, that like, well, why the fuck isn't this happening for me? But the work is if you can continue to be patient and show up to remembering the joy, remembering the community, remembering these pieces that make you feel so full inside,
Absolutely.
like then ease presents itself to you because you're no longer grabbing at something, you're allowing it to
Correct.
come to you. And
Yeah,
like that's life.
it
That's all of
is. It
life.
is.
It's like not reaching, not reaching. Like I'm curious, like what's your? I've said that like seven
It's
times.
okay.
I apologize. What is your relationship to spirituality?
Ah, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm definitely not religious, but I do believe that um, there's a higher being of some sort. I believe that
Hmm.
all of us are literally just shared energy and reciprocity, and there will come a point when your physical being will be so detached from the soul and the energy that you possess, and then that energy is transferred onto someone else or something else, and it just keeps on passing on. Um, and I do feel, however, in that sense, that you should guard your spirit and you should be protective of it and be intentional and choose who it is and what it is that you share it with and to what extent. Yeah.
Mm. Can you share an example of a time when you've had to sort of separate yourself from someone or something to protect that
Oh my
energy?
God, I think it happens more often than I would like to say because it makes me sound like this very stoic person, but I'm not. It's like, no, but there are times when I think people are amazing people. I meet them and they seem great, and all of their friends, or God knows what, says amazing things about them. But I personally don't experience that amazingness from them, um, and
Mm.
I choose to remove myself from those situations or people. And yeah, it definitely happens. I've met people that I've worked with that I felt like you're amazing. I'm sure I hear it. I just don't see it or feel it, and so I will
Mm.
just stay away. I'm sure it doesn't, because once again, I'm not the judge of character. I'm not God. So who am I to say this person is not amazing? However, it's they're just not for me, um, and I'm okay with
Mm.
that. Yeah. There's been jobs
Mm.
too where I'm like, okay, this is definitely not my thing. I don't feel it, and that's okay. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I think a lot of people, myself included, would be envious of that ability to kind of trust that internal knowing. Like, and it's probably, maybe it's not related to kind of like you developing that emotional self awareness, but like, has there been a practice or like a specific intention on your part to cultivate that?
Absolutely.
Or do you feel like,
No, I don't think it.
yeah.
I think that's a very valid point. I don't think it's innate for a lot of people. I think it is. I think for the most part, like this whole level of like emotional intelligence and like all of that comes with a skill, and I think it's something you kind of had to work for. Um,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, I think 2014 ish or so, my mom had a stroke, and it was like the same time I was going through a bad breakup. It was just the worst time ever, and it was like finals at school, just everything, all the
All
things. It
the
was just
things.
like
Yeah.
a bad space for me, and I remember I've never felt that like defeated. And so I know it sounds hella corny, but it was like summer semester, and I was like, I'll take a spirituality class, and I'm so glad I did. Um, because the professor took us to all these places. I must have talked to like 10 imams from different mosques and gone to all these synagogues and Zen temples and Krishna temples. And but I found it really fascinating because they all had different perspectives as to what their religions and spirituality preaches, but the end goal was the same. It was just like love and acceptance of self, and all of those things. And it just kind of made me think like, oh well, maybe perhaps that's what I should work on, is loving myself and putting myself first, even though sounds kind of selfish, but yeah, self-preserving and understanding that accepting me for who I am with hopes of growth is perhaps the best place to start. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, Again, to me, that's the universe's sense of humor. It's like, because the externally noble thing is to care
Right.
for others. I give, I
Exactly.
give, I give, I give. Right? That's what I should be doing. And then you end up as like a dried up husk that's resentful and angry and tired, and no one wants to be around you, and you have no friends and no relationship, and you're like, this
Exactly.
sucks. You're like, man, I guess I have to take care of myself. It's like, and then like it comes back around, but it's like, it's, I think it's there's this swirl, right? Because like America has this individualistic attitude, and like that
For
has its
sure.
pluses and minuses. And I think self
It
love is the
is.
same, right? Like self love, it's a very thin line between like I am putting myself first, I am loving myself, I am taking care of myself, versus like I am hurting other
Exactly.
people by like elbowing them out of the fucking way because I'm like I am important and I need to come first and et cetera, et cetera. And it's like it's always balance, and it's always like constantly learning and tweaking and just improving
And I
little
think
bits every
you hit
single
the
day.
key word is learning. I don't think anyone really knows
Mm,
everything. I think it would be silly to even think you do. So I'm always looking for new ways to learn about the world and how to navigate it, and then like literally about myself. And I think sometimes people teach you those
yeah.
things. I welcome being around people that don't think like me because then it allows me to see different perspectives and all of that. Um, and I'm like totally, I'm one of those weird people. I'm totally fine to argue. I love arguments because then I can see.
Mm.
I can see you pose your perspective, and perhaps I can learn from that. And that's because, like, for
Yes.
me, I personally never really argue to be right more than I want to be heard and understood. And I'll prefer the same courtesy to you. And I
Mm.
feel like we can always just learn that way. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Um, there's like again one of the full circle things. It's like I think part of self love and acceptance is realizing that I am not my
Right.
thoughts. So just because I think I'm a piece of shit in the moment
No.
doesn't make it true. It's just a thought I had. It's like I can let it go. So how can I say that and then listen to someone giving an opinion I don't agree with and be like, your thought makes you an asshole? It's like, no, it's a
Exactly. It
thought.
is. It is
It's a
what it
fucking it's a
is.
fucking thought. Like it is what it is. And like I think again, huh, granted, I think a lot of people walk around with a story about who they are and how the world works that like isn't true, like isn't based in an objective reality, but we're all guilty of it. We all carry sort of truths that are true for us
True.
but not for other people. And so how do we hold on to a set of values where people are respected and seen and listened to, because that's ultimately what we need, and also allow for people to be different, to have different opinions, to want to walk this life differently, because like we're supposed to. I wasn't born for the same reason you were. I didn't absorb the consciousness I did the same way that you did, right? Like we're gonna have different paths, and I I hope, I wish, I pray that like we create more space to see that as a beautiful opportunity instead of like this horrible thing of like, oh my god, if people believe this other
I
thing,
know.
then
It's
we're
such a weird
fucked.
way to
It's
think.
like, well, if you believe that,
Yeah.
then we're fucked. Like, and I don't want
Not
to
at
be
all.
fucked. I don't want the world to be ending. So like, I don't want that. No thanks. No thank you. Um, so like where do you consider yourself kind of in within your journey of dance right now? Like what are you working on? What are you excited about? Kind of like what's
Um,
present for you?
so I feel like I eventually want to have my own show where, so I write a little bit of poetry, and there's some of them that I've put
Mm.
in, like, because my reading voice is really not appealing at all. So I've had someone like read stuff.
Mr. fucking self love over here. Please continue.
Well, I've had someone read some of them with some music in the background. My goal, honestly, like sometime in the future, is to have a show where they all basically are read and people dance to them and fly and do aerial and all of that.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And so I'm hoping that somewhere in the next 5 to 10 years that'll come to fruition. Um, and then I want all of the music to be original scores and pieces, and I'm kind of working on those gradually. Um, and then the set and the backgrounds to be like my own art pieces, literally everything from scratch. It's ambitious, probably, but that's
Mm,
that's my goal. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But like again, that's I think there's a lot of life to be lived in that process, right? Like, because now you're not only understanding what does it mean not just to paint, but to paint for a visual piece of this larger show I'm creating. And
Right.
how do I think about making a painting that responds to a poem that's being read with this kind of music? And what does that bring up for me artistically, right? Like,
Exactly.
there's so much texture to explore there, which is beautiful. And it'll take a lot of fucking time
Oh my God,
because those are not
yeah.
easy questions.
No, no,
Not
not
easy
at all.
questions.
And like trying to find people that can, I guess, carry out that vision
Mm,
is not easy as well. I don't really care for the aesthetics of the person more than like how well they emote and resonate with what is happening in the moment of the poetry and music and all of that. And
mm,
so, like, that's not easy either.
yeah.
Um, but it is a process. I do have like a few songs that I've had made for me by this guy in Denver that I definitely will use eventually. So, yeah,
Great.
it's getting
Yeah.
there ish.
It's funny. I have a similar ambition because before getting into music, I was a storyteller. And so I had these kind of long form narrative shows. And I knew at some point I wanted to bring a, a show together where like there's rap, there's poetry, there's storytelling, like these different kind of vocal textures that allow the show to move along. And when I sit down to try and figure out how to do it, like my head hurts. I'm just like, ugh. Like there's and so much of it is like what feels good to me versus like what am I hoping the audience feels in this moment and what do I want to
Exactly.
like create for them, what am I hoping they walk away with, while not also like doing the whole thing outside of my own body and forgetting that at some point like I have to be the artist too and it has to connect and hit for me at the same time. Like, and again, like I'm learning to love that mess. I don't always love that mess, but on many days I enjoy that mess and just picking apart the threads and starting to figure it out.
Yeah, I think it's part of the process. And like, I think we just kind of have to like be more process oriented versus task oriented. Like it's gonna happen anyway.
Mm,
You might as well live in the moment of trying to create it because
yes.
that's where all your little victories happen. You know,
Hmm.
You're like,
Yes.
yay, finally found a song. Yay, finally found a person. Yay, finally found the music or something. You know, like ah,
Yeah. Yeah. They're like little breadcrumbs from the universe.
you
It's like
really
you're on the right path. Like this will work out. It will take time, but just keep showing up.
right.
Like that's all you can do. Um, I'm curious, like what's the subject matter of the poetry you write?
Oh yeah. So, I mean, my art really all evolves around love. And I know that it's been written through and said and told through time, but yeah. And I feel like love is layered and it's not just a feeling and or emotion, but also action driven. And I feel like it binds us, it unites us. I love the feeling of experiencing, you know, having love and sharing love and um, knowing what it feels like to also lose it um,
Mm-hmm.
and or yearn for it and not have it. Um,
Yep.
I have through vicarious experiences through like also seen people like literally go their whole life without ever experiencing it. And even though I don't know what it's like, it intrigues me. And so that's part of the process and the story I want to tell as well. Because I feel like we talk about love as though it's something that we all know. But there are people out there that perhaps don't know what that's like from any level. You know, even perhaps their parents never expressed and or show them love. And then
Mm-hmm.
they perhaps see that as the way love should be shown. And then they don't show love. And then they get that in return. And they literally go their whole life without ever really experiencing true love.
Right.
Um, And I've been fortunate to have amazing people that have loved me and shown me that. And so I want to be able to share both sides and what that looks like and what that feels like. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. That's beautiful. as a topic is like, ironically, there's been so much art made about love, and I feel like it's barely scratched the surface of all that love is and can be, and how it works and how it looks, and like it's a topic I think you could write about in infinity.
I think so too.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and and what's cool is like your time on this earth and how it is intersected with love is, at once there will be threads that are common, but also your unique path, the order in which it came, the amount in which it came, when it found you in the moments that you needed it, like that is yours. That's your unique little expression and experience that you then get to put out into the world. And I think the biggest thing that storytelling taught me is like, people don't connect to the details of your story, they connect to the emotion.
Absolutely.
So like for you, it could be being an 8-year-old boy in Nigeria, which is something I don't have much of a reference point for. But the way you describe love, I can find a time in my life in New York with my parents or with a teacher or with a coach that makes me remember what that love felt like. And
Exactly.
now all of a sudden you and I can bond, even though the moment in time, the people involved couldn't be more different. And like again, like that's why art is so awesome.
I think so
Or can
too.
be.
Yeah. I really do.
Can be.
I'm really big on like emotion and emoting and feeling things when I watch things or draw things or anything. I feel like it's so important. Because you're right. Like, however, whatever it is you're looking at makes you feel is what kind of resonates and sticks with you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like as artists, especially movement artists, we're so focused on our skills. And I think that that's so important because it shows competency and it shows that you have studied and it shows that you have worked hard. Um,
Yes.
but it also is not what tells, per se, me how to feel. I have never watched a ballet and gone, oh my God, her extensions totally changed my life. You know, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and so as much as all of those things are so important because it really does show that you are this master of your skill. um, I have seen extremely skilled people lack emotion, and
Mm.
that sometimes I feel is a void, and so I'm always really admirable when I see like people like really emote and share just a sliver of humanity in their work. I'm always like, yay, thank God, I can feel something. Yeah,
Yeah. It's calling me back to sort of your experience as a sprinter. And I'm sure there's a balance, right? Because again, you only have 12 seconds if
absolutely.
you're lucky. And so like there is a need for technique and specificity and focus. But if you see someone try to go up there without feeling the adrenaline, without hearing the roar of the crowd, without being
All of
like
those things.
connected to spirit
Yes.
in that moment, like that person's probably not going to win.
No, not
Like,
really.
right. So like I'm curious, how do you think about balancing that? Because I think you do need both. Like the same way you've never seen someone with such extraordinary technique that like the technique and only the technique is what really took you somewhere. I personally have had the experience of seeing someone with all the emotion and no
Right,
technique,
you're like, Lord
and you're like, "Ooh,
Jesus.
I love you," and like you just need to practice more because there is some threshold above which you need to be able to
For
perform so that I'm
sure.
not distracted by your lack of skill,
Right.
let's say.
I think that I think there has to be both. And I think that is part of the process of learning, is just finding people who can hone these skills in for you or even help you tap into them if you have them or they're not quite polished or whatever. But I do feel that sometimes it's up to the artist themselves to one, acknowledge the fact that they're lacking something, and then
Mm,
two, find someone that they can trust themselves enough with to actually help them with that. Um, when I was in Denver, I met some amazing dancers from this dance company called Cleopatra Robinson. And I was so intimidated, like so intimidated by them
mm,
because they were so good, just like amazingly skilled. And I remember one of them. asking me out of nowhere. He's like, "So we have a show coming up, and I would love for you to dance in it." And the first thought that went through my head was absolutely not, because
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I was like, I'm not gonna look crazy next to y'all. Like, no, 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 thank you. But then he
Yeah.
made time for me and like helped me with all like my skills and turning and spotting and um all of these things. And it really did make me realize that there are people out there that are like exceptionally skilled and still are super nice and super kind and
Mm.
have humanity. And those are the kind of people that you want to look for to help you with that. So you do have balance. So you can have the skills that are required and still be able to emote and have people resonate with your work, you know. But I do feel like you gotta find those people. I don't feel like every teacher is a great teacher. Um, I feel like to learn from someone, you kind of have to, on some level, trust them in the sense that you know that they have your best interest at heart. um, I've taken some classes with some people that just make you feel even more inadequate. And I don't know that that's a space that any artist or anyone should be in, because I feel like psychologically you're being torn to pieces, even though physically and anatomically you might be getting better, but your psyche is broken. Um, and so I feel like you gotta like find people that really do care about you and have the skills that you want and are willing to help you hone that in. And those are the guys you go for. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I think it's much like you were saying. It's understanding what you need as an individual. Um, because in what you're just describing, there's a very famous story about a swim coach, and they were doing a workout, and the basic premise was like they had to swim 2 laps under a certain time, and as soon as they swam under the time, they could be done. So if you hit the mark on your first try, you were
Yeah,
done with practice. And this poor swimmer apparently went like 33 times and started to get tired and started to get slower and started to fall away from the standard and then started to beat herself up. And the coach just stood there and was like, go again. And like, it ended up being part of her story that showed her how strong she was. Cause like on the 34th time she hit the standard,
nice.
and it changed the way she approached practice and it made her so resilient and like blah, 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 blah. I don't know, man. If that was me at time 14, I would have been like, fuck you. I'm like, I'm done. No. Right. And like, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I just know about myself, like to feel like someone isn't there with me on the journey, who isn't kind of like seeing the work that I'm putting in. I think I would fucking struggle with that. And so
Yeah,
it's trusting what feels right to you.
I'm big on that. Yeah, you're 100% right. It's like, what do you need? Acknowledging that first, and then finding people that care about you enough to help you get that. Yeah, I don't think it's their job to take on your burden. I don't think it's their job to like pull you through, but I think it's their job to connect with you and empathize with you. And empathy is not
Yes.
sympathy. They're not feeling sorry for you, but they understand, you
Right.
know? Yeah.
Yes. 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 They understand for sure. Um, I'm curious, like, I think this happens to any artist when you reach a certain point of mastery, excellence, skill, whatever it is, like your ability to teach others naturally emerges because you have experiences that others can benefit from. Do you feel called to teach?
Um, so I currently teach right now, but at a school for personal trainers, only because like I was an athlete. I went to a fitness acad. I have degrees in public health and dietetics. And so I have a lot of expertise in the fitness wellness realm. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a friend of mine who is amazing. She was like in Zumanity and all of that. She asked me recently if I wanted to do like a aerial loop workshop. Um, and I was very honest with her because I feel like teaching and learning comes from a basics of fundamental understanding. And
Okay.
with aerial, even though I learned it, I didn't finish the whole professional learning program. And so a lot of the things that I've known were either like knowing on the job or like, here's the piece you got to do to figure it out. And then I figure it out. And so I feel like,
Right.
and then that has all of a sudden been my focus. And I feel like it would be a total disservice if I don't have the like fundamental vocab to teach somebody and all the little details that go with the movement if I've been just so focused on getting the movement versus understanding the process to get it. And so, no, I don't know that I would teach aerial or dance or any movement art more than I just want to be able to like do it and perform it the best way my body knows how to for how long. And then whenever the time comes, put on a show with other dancers and other aerialists and acrobats and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Um, I love that self awareness because I agree with you. I think a lot of people can like I don't even know if it's can teach, but again, like have a skill set that other people want, and then that they perceive that as meaning that they can teach, but like they're not good teachers and they don't want to
Right.
teach,
It's like,
and like not good. It's not good. It's not good.
no, because like real talk, I feel like if you're going to teach someone something, because I feel like it's such a huge disconnect. A lot of people think like, well, I'm great at this, so that means I should be teaching
Yes.
it. But it's like
Yeah.
they teach it as though they expect the student to be at their level, which I think is absolute madness. It's like,
Yes.
no, I need you, teacher person, to elaborate and break down the details so for me to be able to do blank so that I could perhaps be like you. But stop expecting me to be
Yes.
at your level because if I were, I wouldn't be here.
Yes.
Like,
Totally.
stop. No, because like I have okay, like real talk, I'm one of those people who are like, I don't care. I would literally find someone and be like, yo, I need you to teach me XYZ. Or I want to take a workshop or I wanna do a private with you. I don't care. I really don't
Mm.
have that much of pride. And I've seen and try to work with some people where they just like expect you to be doing all this stuff that they're doing. And I'm like, but no, if I could do that, I wouldn't have you teach me it.
Right.
Like
Of course.
so yeah, and so I feel like I don't know that I'm so immersed in the details of fine tuning movement um, to that level, and I think I don't. Yeah, it
Yeah.
wouldn't be fair to whomever I was teaching, so I would never do that. Mm.
Yeah. That makes I mean it makes a ton of sense. I think there's also like and this I mean I don't know if it's true in the military. It was certainly true in restaurants where I worked for a very long time. Like what normally happens is like someone will be a bartender or a server or whatever and they're very good at it and they train other people to do it and blah 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 and it was like, "Oh, like you should go into management." Because like
Right.
that's the next step. Being a manager and being a bartender have fuck all in common.
Exactly.
Like being a great bartender has nothing to do with whether or not you can
Not
be a
one
good
single
manager.
thing.
But like, right. And so rather than just celebrate like, hey, you're great at this, we're just going to let you continue to be great at this and learn from watching you be great at this. We're like, no, like we want to give you this promotion, we want to give you this thing that's supposed to make you feel better, but like the person ultimately fails because the skill set that made them great is no longer the skill set they need to be
Correct.
successful. And like,
Yeah, definitely not.
yeah. I'm very curious. Like, um, what advice would you offer to someone who has always thought about dancing but has always been too intimidated to try?
Um, I'd say just be secure in yourself and know that whatever feelings of, I suppose, like fear or even inadequacy or whatever the case is, I will say this: I feel like it is kind of normal. Um, the fear of the unknown can like elicit a ton of emotion, right? And so I'd say don't neglect those feelings because they're there. So instead of suppressing them, understand that they're there and process them, and then
Yes.
go for it either way, knowing that you
Mm,
shouldn't expect yourself to be a master at it because you're just starting. And so, um, embrace those little flaws that you have and then try to find ways to get them better and just keep showing up, whatever that means to you in whatever capacity. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Brilliant. And last question, do you have a name or a working name for the
I
show?
don't have one yet. I'm still working on that. So my goal is to have like 8 pieces done from 8 poems that I've written. And I've only kind of mapped out 2 of them. So a long way to go. Yeah, we'll see. I'm sure something will pop up.
That's really good.
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%. And again, like, who knows when, and it
exactly.
doesn't matter. Like, it'll happen when it's ready to
Exactly.
happen. It'll be beautiful. Victor, this was a joy. Thank you so much for sharing your
Yay,
time with me
thank
and sharing your
you.
stories. It's such an amazing process. It's been wonderful to
No,
hear.
thank you. It was great.
So, one of the questions we get asked all the time is how can we be more supportive of artists? And sometimes that's actually consuming their art, whether it's buying tickets, streaming their music, watching their videos, etc. But frankly, buying their merch is one of the best ways you can. Our team has finally put together a small package of merch that we're really proud of. It's fun, it's bright, it's colorful. It really espouses so many of the messages that you hear on this podcast about self-love, self-appreciation, and being willing and courageous enough to put your art out into the world. So if you need a gift for yourself or for someone else, please go ahead and take a look. It's jackdawkinsmerch.shopify.com. Thank you so much for listening today. It is genuinely my pleasure, my joy to share these conversations with you. If you are able, if you're willing, please leave a review, hopefully a good one, on whatever platform it is that you're enjoying these conversations. It really helps us with visibility and having these stories be told to a wider and wider audience. There are many, many ways you can connect with us. The best one, just reach out to stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. You can recommend a guest, you can give us feedback, you can send us memes, whatever would make you happy. Thank you again for being here. My name is Jack Dawkins, and we'll see you again soon.